What is naltrexone and what is the Sinclair Method as a treatment for alcohol addiction? Let's dive in. My name is Katie Lane. I am a success story of the Sinclair Method. I started this treatment in 2017 after I struggled with alcohol addiction for nearly 10 years. I tried quitting drinking dozens of times over the course of that period and would relapse over and over again. I just could not stay sober. And I stumbled on this treatment in 2017. It completely changed my life and now I can't stop talking about it. So let's talk a little bit about what the Sinclair Method is. So first of all, the Sinclair Method is a treatment protocol that has been around for nearly 30 years. It has tons of clinical trials and research behind it, but a lot of people still don't know that it exists, unfortunately, which is why I'm such an advocate for it. So this treatment uses the medication naltrexone to help the brain unlearn alcohol addiction. What was really demonstrated in the research that was done by Dr. David Sinclair, who discovered this method, is that alcohol addiction is a learned behavior that happens to almost anyone over time with enough repeated and excessive drinking, but it's something that can be unlearned when the right treatment approach is used. And that's where naltrexone comes in. So naltrexone is taken 1 hour before consuming alcohol, 1 to 2 hours before consuming alcohol, following the Sinclair Method. And that is really the basic protocol. You take naltrexone, you wait 1 hour, and then you drink on the medication. And what naltrexone is doing is it's inside the brain, it's binding to opioid receptors in the brain that would otherwise be getting a flood of feel-good hormones and endorphins when you drink. And that's why alcohol is addictive in the first place, is because it's very, very pleasurable for your brain. It just floods your brain with all of these feel-good hormones. And when we do that over and over and over again, our brain really learns to look for and prefer this huge reward that it's getting from alcohol. So when you take naltrexone before drinking, it's going to be blocking these receptors that would be getting that endorphin reward. And when those receptors are blocked, it just makes alcohol a little bit less interesting and a little bit less pleasurable. Now, the changes with this treatment are oftentimes subtle for many of us. They're so subtle that they can be easy to ignore sometimes. Other times they can be more obvious. But that's why this treatment protocol really needs time to work. We typically say at least 6 to 12 months, maybe more, maybe less, to see full results, because the changes are gradual and progressive over time. And the treatment works, again, because naltrexone is in the brain, it's sitting on those receptors and it's blocking your receptors from getting this reward from alcohol. And so when you drink on this medicine over and over and over again, and your brain is not getting that same reward from alcohol over and over and over again, over time, those pathways get reversed in the brain, and the brain no longer looks to alcohol for this reward. And you can think about this like with anything in life. If you're doing something that's not as pleasurable, let's say you go to your favorite restaurant and the food quality is just a little bit less good each time you go back, you're probably going to want to go back as often, or you're not going to want to go to the place as much. And so the same thing is true when your brain isn't getting that same reward from alcohol over and over and over again. The brain gradually decouples alcohol with this immense pleasure and this immense reward. And so for a lot of us, what can happen through this treatment is that because we're not getting the same reward from alcohol anymore, we start to crave it less often. We start to think about and romanticize drinking less often. I remember for me, that was one of the first and most significant changes I noticed on this treatment, was that wow, I'm not thinking about drinking every single waking hour. My mind feels so free. I can think about other things. And so that's a really big gift that comes with this treatment protocol. Again, it takes time to get there. Another thing that happens for a lot of people is that they just naturally end up drinking less alcohol on this treatment. For me, I was drinking at least a bottle of wine every single night, sometimes whiskey, sometimes beer, a couple bottles of wine. I would drink a lot. I was a daily drinker. And through this treatment, after a while, after about a month or two, I couldn't finish a full bottle of wine anymore. Now, that's still quite a bit of alcohol, but I was not drinking the same amount as I used to. And I would just finish my third or fourth glass and I'd be like, I'm done. I don't want any more. Kind of like how, if you go out for a big piece of chocolate cake and it's really sweet and really rich and it's like, yeah, that was good, but no, I don't want another one. That's how I started to feel with alcohol through the Sinclair Method. So as I've mentioned, this is a gradual process. This treatment protocol really needs time to work. I was just chatting with one of our program members today who said, wow, if I would not have had the understanding and expectation that this treatment needs time to work, I might have stopped taking the medication by now because the changes have been so subtle. But he's been logging his drinks, he's been very mindful, and he's seen some really significant changes in his drinking just 3 months in, but he's still drinking more than he wants to. And so it's really important for people to give this treatment protocol enough time to work. Another really important thing to remember as you're getting started on this treatment is that naltrexone and the Sinclair method are 50% of the equation when we're looking at what it means to overcome alcohol use disorder. In my view, it's a crucial 50%. I would not be where I am today without this treatment. I know that. But the other 50% is really how we are changing our habits, our coping tools, and our lifestyle so that we're creating a life that doesn't revolve so much around alcohol. And naltrexone and the Sinclair method makes it much easier to make these lifestyle changes because, again, it works to fix the issues of what's going on in the brain. And so when you're not craving alcohol as much, it's easier to make these habit changes and say no to alcohol and have alcohol-free days. But just to be aware of this, because I think one of the mistakes I see people make a lot with this treatment is they start on it and they're relying exclusively on the medication to do all of the work, and they're not really engaging the process by gradually shifting their habits, creating new coping tools, and things like that. Also, with regards to getting the naltrexone medication, it is something that requires a prescription in most parts of the world, but technically any doctor can prescribe it to you. The challenge today is that a lot of doctors just don't know about using this medication for alcohol addiction, or they don't feel comfortable prescribing a medicine for alcohol addiction, especially if they're not a specialist. So oftentimes people will go to their doctor and they will be refused a prescription. Maybe they won't, maybe their doctor will prescribe, but just to be aware that it's not something that is always easy to get access to, which is why in our program we work with specialists who are telemedicine doctors in all 50 states and parts of Canada as well, who will prescribe the medication following the Sinclair Method protocol. Another thing that's really encouraging about the Sinclair method is that, as I mentioned, it has so much research behind it, and this research has demonstrated that it actually has a clinically proven 78% success rate, which is just incredible, especially if you look at the success rate of more abstinence-based treatments, which are estimated to be 5-10%, maybe a little more, maybe a little bit less. But it's really important to recognize that this success really is based upon someone following the protocol correctly and consistently and giving it enough time to work. So it's really important that those two things are done, that someone's always taking naltrexone correctly and they're giving it enough time. Like I said, we tell people at least 1 year. But for me, I just remember when I started on the treatment, I was like grounding into the evidence and the science behind it. And it just caused me to have so much hope and belief and faith that this treatment was going to work for me because it had such a high success rate. Also, I almost forgot to mention one of the most unique things about the Sinclair Method treatment protocol is that it's not an abstinence-based treatment protocol. So if your goal is to drink moderately through this treatment, that is totally possible. With this treatment, because it's working to repair alcohol use disorder neurologically, which is really the root cause of excessive drinking and problematic drinking, most people can get to a place over time through this treatment where they experience a sense of regained control over alcohol. The important thing to do is to always continue to take naltrexone before drinking. It protects you from redeveloping alcohol use disorder. But I would say most people who use this treatment do it with the goal to drink moderately. That was originally my goal. But what happened to me, and actually happens to a lot of people through this treatment, is the longer we're on the treatment, we just kind of fall out of love with alcohol. And some people end up going alcohol-free or quitting drinking sort of by accident, simply because they're not as interested in drinking anymore. So moderate drinking or going alcohol-free in the future are both totally doable goals with this treatment. The final thing I will say as well is that the Sinclair Method is really intended for people who are currently drinking or people who feel like they are going to relapse again. This treatment is not intended for people who are sober from alcohol and doing well in their recovery. Again, for people who are still drinking or people who are currently sober and just know that they're going to relapse again. I was that type of person many, many times. As always, you guys, if you want more support on the Sinclair Sinclair Method, if you're ready to get started or you want to plug into expert guidance, we would love to support you inside of our program. You can learn more about it and get started with the link in my profile. Bye for now.